wow. Just wow. Before I say anything else, that was one of the bloodiest movies I've ever seen. Welcome back to Wrestling with Horror. My name is Andrew Dreamer, and as always, I'm here to talk about professional wrestling, horror movies, and to look at all the ways that they intersect, connect, and everything in between. And of course, I went to see Evil Dead Rise today. So now I'm going to talk about it a little bit, talk about the positives, the negatives, the callbacks, everything about this movie. I'm going to split it up into two parts. We're going to do kind of like a spoiler-free section, and then we're going to get into some spoilers toward the end of the video. But overall, before I say anything else, I enjoyed the film. I liked it quite a bit. It's exactly what I expected going in, but there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't really know much about the story or anything like that, but nonetheless, I enjoyed the film a lot. And let's just talk about some Deadites. So as I said, I didn't really know a ton about this movie. I watched the first trailer, but I avoided everything else after that, and that was intentional. I didn't really want to see a lot. I wanted to go into this as blind as possible. And you know what? I think that was the right choice. I didn't know really anything about the story. I knew that there was a family in a high rise, and basically they were becoming Deadites, at least the mother was. And that's what we see in the trailer. Okay, so let's talk about some non-spoilers for this movie. And as I said in the intro of this video, just wow. This movie was gory, it was bloody, it was violent, it was visceral, it was gruesome, a lot of carnage, and that's exactly what I wanted. This is definitely an Evil Dead movie. It fits perfectly into the universe, I think. Doesn't have any really comedic elements to it, kind of like, more like the original and then the remake in 2013. So it fits more into those categories than it does Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness, and that's fine. Those things have a place within this franchise, and this movie fits in there perfectly for me. You know, you got to see a lot of the older things. There's some callbacks to the previous movies, to different characters. But as I said, the biggest thing for me was the absolute carnage that we got to see on the screen. I loved every second of it. There were just a crazy amount of blood and gore in this film. Now, the characters, I thought most of the characters were pretty good. I thought the acting was pretty decent throughout most of the film, especially from the lead. The two, kind of the mother character and the other lead in the film, I thought that their acting was really done really well. The writing, you know what, it worked for me. I'm not going to say that it was the best written movie I've ever seen. It might not even be the best written movie in the franchise, but it was good. It worked for me. I liked the way that they shot this film. The directors did a fantastic job with that. The cinematography, like I said, was just great. The sound design is what really got me. And that was the thing that stuck out to me in this with this movie a lot throughout the entire time. And my girlfriend went with me, and she kind of said the same thing. It was very loud. It was extremely loud throughout the entire thing, and that, I think, really helped this film be even more terrifying than it would be without it. And this film was terrifying. Now, I'm not somebody who ever really gets scared during a movie, but I can recognize when things are tense and scary and terrifying, and this movie had a lot of terrifying moments. It had some genuine jump scares that were not just stereotypical cliche jump scares thrown in to be jump scares. They were actual jump scares that did what they're intended to do. And that just goes to show you how well this movie was executed. You know, it's one thing to have an idea on paper, but to actually see it executed is a whole nother thing. And they executed it very well. Now, just a couple of little negatives before we really kind of get into the spoilers of the film. The biggest negative for me was that there were some times in the film where it kind of just felt like the story was dragging a little bit towards the middle. You know, you kind of kept thinking you were going into the third act, but it was really just setting up for another tense moment, which is fine to an extent. but I found myself kind of noticing it more than I typically would. And so that is probably the biggest negative I have, and that's not even really anything major. It's just kind of a nitpicky thing. It didn't really hinder my experience, so it's not super bad, but it is a negative nonetheless. And this other negative is going to kind of tie into a positive too, because the opening of this film I thought was really good. It was it just started off the film with a bang. It got scary instantly, and I really enjoyed the opening of this film. But where it becomes a negative is the kind of just forced way that this intro was connected to the rest of the film. And that's all that I'll really say about that. And like I said, it didn't make a lot of sense. It was kind of just, it was a forced way to have this amazing opening scene tie into a film that really had nothing to do with that opening scene. All of that being said, let's move into spoilers. Like I said, spoilers. If you haven't seen this movie, stop now, go watch the movie, and come back. So as I was talking about just a minute ago with the opening of this film, we open on this lake, and you have three people staying at this kind of like lake house. It's a cabin in the woods attached to a lake. It's of course trying to be a sort of semi-callback to that original cabin from The Evil Dead in 1981. It doesn't look like it, but it's obviously intended to be an homage to that. Now here, you get this line of dialogue from one of these characters saying that this girl is inside sick and her boyfriend needs to go check on her and all this stuff. She ends up going in herself because she's sick of dealing with the boyfriend. And she sits down and this girl's just kind of laying on the bed and you don't really know what's going on with her. And then she starts, quoting these horrific passages from this book. And long story short, you get the movie started off with a bang and full of carnage when she just turns into a deadeye, and she does this thing where she wraps her hand around the girl's ponytail and just basically scalps her by just yanking her hair off her head and ripping her scalp off. And then there's this whole scene where they run out to the lake and the boyfriend gets killed in the water, and that's when we get the title card. From there, we find out that our main character, Beth, is pregnant, and that's going to be kind of not really a catalyst going forward, but it's going to be a pretty major thing or a plot point or a line of dialogue going forward throughout the movie. And she is called a groupie throughout the film. She doesn't consider herself a groupie. She is a guitar technician, so she works on electric guitars and is good with electronics and things like that. So she ends up going to her sister's house where her sister lives alone with her 3 kids after their father has left them. Now, the mom is a tattoo artist. She has this tattoo gun she's working on. Still very electrical. She's working on it herself. The sisters share that in common. You have a kid that wants to be a DJ, another kid going to a protest, and then this other little girl who is chopping the head off a doll to create a staff that she actually calls Staffany. It's one of the few comedic moments in the film where she talks about Staffany being there to protect them all. And, things ensue. They go to get pizza, the kids do. Then an earthquake happens, and basically it creates this hole in the floor of the building that they live in, which is basically condemned. And he jumps down into the hole, the son Danny does. And it's like an old bank vault kind of thing. And that's where we find the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. He takes the book, he takes a few vinyl records, he takes them back up to their apartment, and he reads the book, looks at all the pictures, and then he listens to the vinyl records. And of course, we know what happens in an Evil Dead movie when you hear somebody recite passages from the book. The Deadites appear. And of course, this Deadite happens to just go right into their mother. And that's when things get really creepy. She does a lot of creepy, just body acting and facial acting, and the voice, the tweaks that they do to her voice throughout the entire thing are just creepy. And that's probably the best part of this movie, is how scary and terrifying the Deadites are. Now, the mom is still trying to pretend like she's actually their mom. At some point, she tries to get the little girl to let her in, and of course that doesn't work. There is one point where her daughter Bridget, the older daughter, she gets her down and she takes that tattoo gun, she jams it into her face, and then she jams it into her daughter's face, basically tattooing her face. And you know what happens when things like that happen? The daughter Bridget turns into a deadite as well. And at that point, that's when we get another like very gruesome moment when the aunt comes in and realizes that she's a deadite now. And there's this scene with the cheese grater where she takes it and she just scrapes it down her aunt's leg, and that's just, ugh. It kind of got me. I was like, oh gosh. And then from there, you know, it's an Evil Dead movie. You know, they think they kill her. Then the son gets turned into a deadite when he gets attacked by his sister and stabbed, and she pukes blood all over him, and it's disgusting. And from there, they take out the son, the daughter, and then it's just the aunt and the youngest daughter who can't be more than, 7, 8, 9 years old. And they're trying to escape. They know that there is a fire escape in this room. They're trying to get to it. They can't. Now, there are a few different neighbors who are out in the hallway who are dead at this point because the mother got locked out, and she basically killed them all throughout the evening. And, there's a shotgun there, and she blows the mother's leg off, the mother's arm, and then the other ones start coming alive, and they can't really get into that room, so the only thing they can do is run into the broken elevator. And then that's when the elevator starts filling with blood, and the deadites all kind of just combine into this one, like, deadite creature that almost has, like, some tentacle things, but it's really just arms and legs. But it's scary, it's creepy, it's gross. And, of course, when the elevator's weight limit is reached, it falls to the bottom of the building, into the basement where the garage is, which is where they're trying to get to. They get into the car, they try to escape, and then it ends up where we get some of our biggest callbacks in the movie. You get this scene, now at this point they're all covered in blood, like extensively, like just drenched in blood. They almost escape, but the creature, the deadite, not really a creature, the deadite grabs Cassie, the little girl, and pulls her back in. And so Beth, the aunt, goes back in to save her. She finds a chainsaw, and of course, we know where chainsaws fit into this series. Very big callback to Ash, and there is even a scene where she is running, and you got the camera like right here in her face, and it is very reminiscent of Ash running through the house, his face covered in blood. And that's exactly what I thought of. She looked like Ash. She was acting like Ash at the moment. But basically what happens here at the end of the film is that Beth gets this chainsaw. She chainsaws the crap out of this deadite and pushes it into this mulcher that is down in the basement garage. And I mean, it gets mulched, like ridiculously mulched. And then, of course, there's some last little pleas from the deadite to, you're not gonna beat us, you can't win, that kind of thing. But she takes care of them, and then we're left with Beth and Cassie to live happily ever after, right? We're gonna get an Evil Dead movie with an actual happy ending. Not quite, because one thing that we forgot about was the opening scene of this film, which actually takes place the day after the events of the rest of the film. And we get this girl walking out of her apartment who is actually on a different floor, and she goes down to the basement and gets in her car. She starts to leave and realizes that there's blood everywhere and nobody else is around, and the deadites just go into her. And that's where our film ends, and of course that leads to the opening scene. But again, that opening scene and that ending, just a ham-fisted way to make something interesting happen. It just didn't work for me. That was the biggest negative I had. Everything else was pretty good. There were a few kind of slow story elements that I thought could have been better. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this movie. It was bloody awesome. It was fantastically gory and just extravagantly disgusting in the best way. And I really loved it, and I can't wait to see it again. I can't wait to get a 4K copy of this movie and watch it at home eventually. I'm really excited for that. Like I said, go watch this movie. If you haven't seen it and you got it all spoiled, well, I'm sorry, but, you were warned. So go watch the movie. I would like to go see it again before it exits theaters. I don't think I have anything else today. Like I said, we're going to review the rest of the Evil Dead movies, and then we're going to do a ranking of all of the Evil Dead movies, including this new one. Spoiler alert, this was probably going to be pretty high. I really liked it. But until next time, my name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.